evening. I call to order the Lakewood City Council meeting of August 12th, 2019, 7 p.m. in council chambers. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Paul.
Here.
Roybal.
Here.
Gutwein. Here. Skilling. LeBure.
Here.
Abel.
Here.
Vincent. Here. Beta.
Here.
Johnson. Here. Frank. Here. Harrison. Here. You have a quorum.
Great. Thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody for coming out tonight, or thank you for coming out tonight, and welcome those who may be tuning in. I'd ask that you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silent prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. The clerk, please. There she is. All right, this is the point in the meeting where we will take public comment on any non-agenda items this evening. You'll have a 3-minute time limit. This little box here will go green for 2.5, 30 seconds yellow, and when your time's up red, actually might have a timer on it now. I can't see it, but I think there may be a timer so you can have your own countdown. I ask that you direct your comments at the City Council, and we will get going with Mr. Schroyer. Come on down. And we did receive your email as well, so thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. I apologize, I didn't have my name on it, so I hope that wasn't confusing. No, I appreciate it, and just wanted to say a few things in a timely way. I think 2 weeks, you'll bring this up in more depth, but just wanted to say, I mean, somebody, I think, needs to say it, at least from my perspective, that it's okay to wait a year on that recycling issue. It is okay. You won't lose anything. I think the city and most households really just aren't quite ready. I really sense that. And you don't gain a lot if there's like 51% or 52% it could pass, but if there's a lot of opposition, we don't get too far. I also think we can get a better deal if we do take another year to build support throughout the city. I think that's really important. We don't want kind of a warped situation with some areas that are really advanced, some that are catching up. That's toxic politically. I think you ought to apply those model sustainability neighborhoods. You have a great investment in that. Those are really world-class. Well, they need to take the next step and work with those areas that are struggling. That'd help balance everything out. And then when you do put it to the voters, it'll go through strong. People go, yeah, we're on the same page. We kind of understand. I think the curbside composting has to really be investigated. That's the real value, much more than the old traditional curbside recycling. Composting is tremendously valuable. The city would really be historic if you're able to break through and offer that on a universal basis to customers or to residents' households. Man, you'll make history. That would be tremendous. I think all these big cities are trying to do that. You're in a position to maybe do that. That's worth fighting for another year to see if we can get there. I also listed some other homework items that I kind of, your sustainability division left out. I really think you ought to look at that SB 192 grant that just passed the legislature. Lakewood seems perfect for that. That would help address some of the things that I list here. You come back in a year, pass 60, 70%, and you'll have a historic waste hauler program. But I do applaud the city for taking the step to move up to this point. But somebody needs to say, it's okay to wait a year. Let's get a better proposal. And Your Honor, thanks for the time.
Great. Thank you, sir. Thanks for your thoughtful comments and your email. Ms. Judson? Good evening.
So everyone knows me probably, but Lynn Judson, I noticed the rules are to say my name and address, Judson, 1805 South Van Gordon Street, Lakewood. I realized that I signed up for non-agenda because I realized that what I'm going to talk about is not actually being voted on, but I thought it was of educational value. And I wanted to just talk for a minute about exposure to radio frequency radiation. Dr. Deborah Davis, who's an internationally renowned epidemiologist, is director of the Board on Environmental Studies and Toxicology of the National Academy of Sciences, which is one of the very highest science bodies in this country, as you know, in DC. And she's founder of the Environmental Health Trust. That trust raises awareness of impacts of cell phone use on public health and performs cutting-edge research on exposure to cell phones and other wireless radiation. Well, she recently reported the results of a 10-year very well-designed study by the National Toxicology Program. That program found clear evidence of the increased incidence of rare tumors of the nerve inside the heart, which is interesting, malignant brain tumors or gliomas, adrenal gland tumors, and tumors of the acoustic nerve of the ear, neuromas, and they cause both hearing loss and facial paralysis. So this is even with the technology we have now, the cell phones. We don't really have 5G cell phones yet. They require 12 antenna per phone, and they... So because these are rare tumors, it would be very unlikely that these would happen except for the exposure, which is high levels of the radio frequency radiation. So these are pretty threatening. Malignant brain tumors, the tumors of the nerve affecting heart rate, the acoustic nerve causing hearing loss and facial paralysis. Now, 5G goes a step beyond that, and it would require up to 12 antennas per phone, which I think we only have one now, ground antennas every 100 meters, which is every 300 feet throughout the city, and of course, the launching of 20,000 plus satellites. So the beams could be focused for military purposes from these satellites for crowd control or to make people's skin heat up and feel like it's on fire. I'm just giving you some very scary things. Okay, the other thing about the radio frequency satellites is that they would emit 24/7 all the time, and they would interfere with the wavelengths used for weather prediction or moisture detection. So in other words, pilots would not be able to get weather reports. So thank you for listening. You need to explore whether, if we do go to broadband control in the city, we want to know how that would affect the institution of 5G. And I think it's very dangerous because it goes beyond even the effects that I've mentioned.
Great. Thank you. Carol Baum?
Good evening. I'm also very concerned about the new 5G technology that's being implemented in countries throughout the world. And also it's being implemented here in the United States. There was a hearing before Congress, and a question was asked if there had been any studies done to prove that this technology is safe for the public, and the answer was no. In Geneva, Switzerland, residents are feeling the effect of this technology and have reported about having strange side effects after the 5G towers were installed and turned on near or where they live. Insomnia, headaches, fatigue, ringing in the ear, feeling strong pain on the left side of the head and behind the skull, and rapid heartbeat. In some cases, these problems are even more serious, like some who can no longer sleep at night and who spend their nights in the forests to escape the waves. Ann Mayer, who is a resident in the town of Huntington, told about the impact that Verizon's small cell antennas and other carriers' radiating devices are having on trees in the area. The trees are smaller than the other trees that surround it, and they don't have very many leaves on them, and the fruit-producing trees have very low fruit yield. Citizens for 5G Awareness has notified the Town of Huntington Council of Science about the concerns they have in Huntington, yet they continue to implement 5G in the neighborhoods right outside of homes, nurseries, and schools. Children are very susceptible to radiation, so we have to be even more careful with children. Instead of listening to the people who live there and are feeling the effects of 5G, the city needs to protect the residents of Huntington and shut this dangerous, unregulated experiment down until more studies can be done to make sure that whatever technology is used, it should be safe for the residents that live there. One way to make it safer is to wire it to the residence or other building and then to wire it inside the building. Ann Mayer said at a meeting that the oversaturation of Wi-Fi in our homes and schools and now 5G in our streets right outside of our homes, schools, and workplaces may very well be the root cause of the reported cancer clusters in the township of Huntington involving adults and young children. What can Lakewood do about this important issue is first to educate ourselves on this topic. Then when we have learned about it, we can take action by helping others to be informed and petition our government officials to find ways to use technology that is safe. There is a summit that will be held over the internet on August 26th through September 1st by experts on this important topic. The website to log into is the 5gsummit.com/event. You can also purchase the summit for a minimal fee and watch it
Time's
at
up, thank
your own
you.
convenience. I just have one more sentence. Can I read it since there's not very many people here tonight? Thank you. If you are so concerned about sustainability, this will not be sustainable, and we need to do everything in our power to do what is best for the people and the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Muller?
You're not going to believe this, but I actually have a funny story I'm going to tell you guys tonight. And I hope the mayor gives me a little bit more time so I can get through this story. Last night on the way home, I was driving up Colfax. And I saw, well, it turned out to be six cars, police cars, plus a seventh unmarked car, and a Jefferson County guard. They toured the schools. Surrounding in a big group. And I thought, well, with that many cops, they must have got Osama bin Laden or one of the FBI's top 10 guys or something, right? So I get out of the car, I wanted to see what was going on, and I walk over there, and they got this guy. Kind of a pudgy guy, and I'm pudgy, so I can say pudgy, in a bright yellow shirt, barefoot. He's riding a green tricycle down Colfax with blue lights on the back. All these cops are surrounding him. And I went, what in the world is this all about? And evidently, they had chased him down Colfax for over 2 miles. Him pedaling like a madman trying to get away from this guy in this Jefferson County car. And the police car, the Lakewood cars with their lights ablazing are right behind him. So anyway, I thought that was a very funny story that only on Colfax could you find something like that. But the sad part about it is we still have a 300% increase in crime. And we got 10 cops chasing a fat guy on a green tricycle. That's so sad. Anyway, secondly, I was at a meeting of business people, and 3 of them were talking about 200, how it was going to really affect their business. And the 2 guys were griping about, the city was really screwing up their plans and all this. And the third one says, don't worry about it. I talked to the guy over at planning. He says, as soon as the election is over, as soon as 6 months are gone, it's business as usual. Is that right? Something else to hang around somebody's neck. Larry Dorr, I sat through his finance meeting right here. He says, oh, we're going to have a 4% increase in revenue this year. I said, wow, that's very ambitious. And so after the meeting, I said, Larry, if you even hit even, I'm going to be surprised. I win. So Mr. Sox, he missed by a lot. Larry Dorr, AKA Sox, he missed. Let's see, what else?
Your time's up, sir.
Oh, well, thank you. I got through most of it. Thank you. Oh, by the way,
Anybody else wish to speak?
just wanted to bring up one thing.
Your-
There's one
Your time's up, sir.
handicap place down by the elevator,
Your-
and there's BMW parked in there. And I really appreciate those handicap spots. There's not near enough of them downstairs.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak? Sorry. Okay. Thank you. I'll now close public comment. Appreciate everybody coming up. Well, you both know the rules. One time only during public comment. It's been that way for 50 years, maybe. I don't know. But thank you. We certainly have other opportunities for you to come and chat with us. So appreciate everybody coming out for comment. I would just echo one thing. I'm certainly probably 100% sure that our staff did not say something in that regard about question 200. We have a very professional staff that is working diligently to do all implementation of 200. So with that, will the clerk please, oh, no, executive report. Ms.
yeah.
Hodson,
Thank you.
thanks.
Actually, I just have a couple of things this evening. The first one is a report on July Parks and Recreation Month, which was last month. So here's some data that may be interesting to you. 50 people attended our pickleball event. 50 people attended pickleball. 280 people attended the movie in the park on the 18th. And we raised over $29,000 in sales for the 5-visit Punch Pass, which is kind of an introductory way of getting people to not have to invest too much, but to come and use the recreation centers and hopefully get addicted to them. Fitness numbers, we had 171 total packages sold, amounting to over $46,000 in revenue, which is good. We have a couple of facility closures coming up this month. August is usually the month where we close recreation centers because it's that time where we can do some deep cleaning and some more major repairs. And the Link Recreation Center will be closed August 19th through the 23rd. 19th through the 23rd. And what am I? Oh, the Cultural Center. I'm sorry. That's just another facility. It's not a rec center. The Cultural Center will be closed August 26th through the 30th, again for deep cleaning. So these dates will be posted online, so please refer to them as constituents ask for these closing dates. I wanted to give you a brief update on the budget as well. We've talked about this once or twice, and it looks like our revenues are continuing to track below our projections, and that includes 2019. So the leadership staff is working diligently to find savings and reductions for the 2019 budget. Our goal, as I've mentioned before, is 6%. Every single department is very engaged in this. I can't tell you how many meetings that we've had as a staff, and it looks like we're going to hit that goal. It looks like we're on track. So that's really good news. And as you see the 2020 budget, we're going to be real conservative as well, not knowing how the revenues are going to do next year. We have our budget study session on September 16th, and that's when you'll get a thorough review of the 2019 expense line and the revenue line, as well as a presentation of the 2020 budget. So that's something we can all look forward to, is a long meeting focusing just on the budget on September 16th. So needless to say, this has been a real straining exercise for the staff. Probably somewhat good in terms of really forcing people to look in their budgets and where we can exercise more discipline, where we can look at really examining the programs that we should continue and maybe programs that are ready to be decreased or eliminated. We're watching our revenue patterns regionally, talking to the other cities in the metro area and in Colorado to hear how their revenue lines are doing so that we can get a sense for broader trends in the metro area as well as the state. We're really drilling in to better understand what is the root cause of our decline in revenues. What is that? What's occurring, and what can we do to be more responsive to that? And this is, of course, all about sales tax collections. Finally, the Budget and Audit Committee meeting is next Monday, which is August 19th at 5:30. We have 3 people from council on that committee, but it's an open meeting. So if any of the rest of you want to attend, you sure can, as can the public. So it's 5:30, Budget and Audit Committee, upstairs, no, in the Finance Conference Room, I believe. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson. All right, next up is the consent agenda. The use of the consent agenda has been made to expedite council action. Contains both resolutions and tonight only resolutions. Resolutions are items of a routine nature. Members of the public will have an opportunity in a moment to comment on any of the proposed resolutions. Any council member may request an item on the consent agenda be removed for separate discussion and action under general business. Will the clerk please read the items on the consent agenda into the record?
The consent agenda consists of items 6 and 7 only. Item 6, Resolution 2019-24, approving participation by the City of Lakewood in a coordinated election to be conducted on November 5th, 2019 by the Jefferson County Clerk and Recorder. And item 7, Resolution 2019-25, submitting to the registered electors of the City of Lakewood at the regular municipal election to be held on November 5th, 2019, a ballot question to authorize the City of Lakewood to provide telecommunication services, high-speed internet services, and/or cable television services, either directly or indirectly with public or private sector partners.
Thank you. Councilor Franks, did you wish to pull item 7? For general business?
For the broadband resolution, yeah. And really the reason we're pulling that is just to make sure that the public understands what that is. There's been confusion that the city is engaging in going with a public-private partnership for broadband. So I just want to get clarity around exactly that that's related to the Senate bill and what a yes vote would mean. So
thank you for that. Okay, so we'll remove item 7 and reintroduce it under general business. I'll now open the public hearing on resolution 19-24, which is approving participation by the City of Lakewood in a coordinated election on November 5th. Ms. Judson, did you want to speak to that, or were you wanting to speak to item 7? Broadband. Okay, we'll call you back up then. Yep. Anybody else wish to speak for item 2019-24? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and ask for a motion.
Mayor Paul, I move for adoption of resolution 2019-24, which was introduced into the record by the city clerk.
Second.
Thank you both. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please cast your votes. Passes 11 ayes, 0 nays. I'll now open the public. Well, will the clerk please read item 8?
Item 8, Ordinance 2019-31, setting the salaries of municipal court judges.
Okay, I'll now open the public hearing on ordinance 2019-31. Nobody's indicated a wish to speak. Any public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public hearing. Ask for a motion.
Mayor, I move for the adoption of ordinance O-2019-31 on second and final reading.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please cast your votes. Passes 11 ayes, 0 nays. Will the clerk please reintroduce item 7 into the record?
Resolution 2019-25, submitting to the registered electors of the City of Lakewood at the regular municipal election to be held on November 5th, 2019, a ballot question to authorize the City of Lakewood to provide telecommunication services, high-speed internet services, and/or cable television services, either directly or indirectly with public or private sector partners.
Right. I'll now open public comment. Ms. Judson. Good evening.
Hello. I wanted to speak very briefly to the topic of municipal ownership of broadband and telecommunication services. There was a important talk given by the FCC Commissioner Michael O'Reilly, about this topic, and he warned of the dangers of municipal ownership of broadband under the topic of threats to free speech. He felt that there were some dangers to the ability of all sides of an issue to be heard, basically. So there's a threat to free speech. And that was a recent talk. If you Google Michael O'Reilly or FCC or free speech, or all three, you should come up with that. And I will try to forward that to city councilors. In addition, I did hear that the city of Fort Collins was trying to institute broadband and have started, and I've heard that they spent close to $30 million and they're only about a fifth of the way done with installing it. So that would mean it was very expensive, be over $100 million. So just to keep those two things in mind, and I don't claim to be any expert, but what Carol was trying to convey is that we should offer an option to people to wire the cables coming into the home and then wire it through our homes so we don't have a lot of wireless exposure. And that if we do, say, ever offer broadband, we should make sure that the option is there. People don't have to have a wireless router. They can also have internet wired in and then wired throughout their home. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. If anybody else wishes to speak, please come down and stop by the clerk and sign up. Good evening.
Good evening. Just a comment. My name is Rick Ash, live in Ward 3. I'm looking at the wording of what you're about to take a vote on here, and I've been commenting about this at all of the individual ward meetings that I go to. The way I see it worded right now, it really looks like you're asking the voters to vote on the city implementing broadband and internet services in the city. The way it's been presented throughout all the meetings, whether it's here at City Council or whatever, is to opt out of the Colorado state law that doesn't allow us to make our own decision on this. The whole idea of it is to give the power to the city of Lakewood to decide what, if anything, whenever they decide they want to do this. And the way this is worded here, it looks very much to me like voters are going to look at it and say, wait a minute, you're going to start installing internet and broadband across the whole city? Whereas what you're only asking the voters to vote on is to vote on the current Colorado state law that says we can't do anything even if we want to. And it needs to be clear to the voters that we're not asking you to allow us to start putting in lines and installing broadband, but we just want to be able to make that decision ourselves. And there's no wording here about opting out of the actual law that says we can't do it right now. So I think it needs to be a lot clearer. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? I'll close public comment and ask for a motion, please.
Mayor, I move for the adoption of ordinance O-2019-31 on second and final reading. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a wrong one.
Resolution 2019-25.
Second.
Councilor Franks?
Thanks, Mayor Paul. So to reiterate earlier, that's what I have spent countless numbers of time on the phone answering. I don't think the language is clear enough. I think that it sounds like we do have time, since we will be considering something else for the ballot, I just am really uncomfortable. I think that people really won't be clear that it's really opt out of a particular Senate bill. So that's why I asked for it to be pulled, and would love to hear what other counselors have to say.
Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. I'd like to echo what Councilor Franks just said. When I was reading through the language, it sounds like we're going to go forward with this, and that really isn't what the intent of what we're trying to do is. I had floated an idea earlier today about a little tweak in the language, but it sounds like we're trying to have uniformity with other cities in the way it's being written. But I too feel that we really need to take another look at this. What I had wanted is to have the city have the ability to authorize telecommunications. That seems to be a whole different context, but I agree, we need to retool this one.
Mayor Pro Tem Abel.
I also agree. The wording seems to take a direct route from the vote to providing telecommunication services with public or private sector partners, and I think it needs to be clear that we're simply opting out of the state's prohibition on it. And I know this is probably boilerplate language that most communities use, but it's not clear enough for our community to use it. Thank you.
Councilor LeBeer.
Yeah, I agree with those statements. I'm looking through. We have that 152 packet. I don't know if you guys have taken a look at it, but there are a lot of examples in there about other ways that maybe perhaps this could have been written. So if there is time to take another crack at it, I'm happy to take a look at that. And I don't know if our legal counsel has, any specific reasons why it's the way it is, but yeah, if we have time, I'm happy to take another look at the way we wrote it. Thanks.
Councilor Harrison.
Ditto.
Councilor Skilling.
You can take a quick crack at it and say, shall the city of Lakewood, Colorado be authorized to decide whether to provide? So that'd be the first part of that paragraph. Cool. And then the last part of it, where it says, without limiting its home rule authority by exempting from SB 152. Those would be the two additions that I think would make it a lot clearer, if we're trying to decide this tonight and not pushing it off to another meeting.
Mr. Graham.
Thank you, Mayor. The language was crafted primarily, by Mr. Goldstein, but I worked on it as well. Ken Fellman, if you know Ken, he's a telecom attorney, and this was sort of his preferred language. My concern about Mr. Skilling's suggestion about deciding is I don't know enough about the FCC rules and SB 152 to be able to make a comment on that. I don't know if Mr. Goldstein does. I think the idea of adding at the end, exempting, or not necessarily at the end, somewhere in the language, exempting the city from the provisions of, SB 152, which is actually cited here in its true form. I think that's a great idea. My concern is I'm not an expert on SB 152, so I'm not sure about the word decide to authorize, I guess.
So would it suffice to send this back to Mr. Fellman and Mr. Goldstein with kind of the understanding of where council would like to see some more direct language and then be able to have this come back, so it would be a postponement.
That is something that we can do, because as Councilor Franks said, we do have a little bit of time on this. And unfortunately, Mr. Fellman's not in town, so we weren't able to have him here to be able to craft this on the spot. And he really is the expert. I think when we had his presentation, he had said he would recommend language that's been used in other cities to follow that. And if that's not adequate, or you want it a little more specific, we're happy to do that. We'll talk to Ken when he's back in town and ask him to make some adjustments to it. And we can bring it back, I want to say on the 26th, which is when you're going to get the other ballot question on the trash issue, the waste hauling. So get ready for a long night.
So thank you. So point of order here, I guess we would postpone, so we would extend until August 26th.
Yes, I would postpone to a date certain, August 26th. I believe that's the latest date.
That's it.
Okay. And is there clarity as to what you've heard from council as to more direct? Seeing Mr. Goldstein give us a yes. Yeah. Councilor LeBaire and Councilor Bita, do you want to weigh in on this, or do you want to?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I will.
Okay. So I'll ask that we withdraw the motion.
I will also, or I want to weigh in.
Councilor LeBaire?
Yeah, my other suggestion was, we do have a list of numerous ballot measures that have already gone through other cities, vetted by their legal counsel, and that have passed. Centennial, I'm looking at Centennial's one they did in 2013. It's pretty clear about how this is about not increasing taxes. It just restores local authority that was denied to all local governments by the state legislature to foster a more competitive marketplace. It goes into a couple other sentences, but something like that I think might be more clear. And if the council has an appetite for it, I'm happy to take a few minutes to just take a look at this and see if we want to disseminate this around. And so I don't know how our legal counsel feels about that, but
Beg, borrow, and steal doesn't bother me at all. We'd be happy to take a look at whatever language has worked in other communities. And like I said, we were really just relying on what Mr. Fellman had suggested. So that's great.
Would we want to take a quick recess just to have them take a look at it?
So, no. So Councilor LeBaire, I appreciate that. I think it's important that we have our legal counsel be a part of this discussion.
But we can look at that language and make sure that Ken's aware of that. I have a feeling he had a hand in that language as well.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I withdraw the motion to adopt resolution 2019-25.
I withdraw the second.
Okay. So will you now, I'll ask for a motion to continue.
I move to continue consideration of resolution 2019-25 to a date certain of August 26, 2019.
Second.
Great. So there's a motion and a second. And does it, just for everybody to know, it may be amended, so that may see some changes to that. So motion and a second, please cast your votes. Passes 11 ayes, 0 nays. Thank you. The other general business topic, Councilor Gutwein.
Thank you. The background is that we have a ditch. There are many in the city of Lakewood, and the ditch company is supposed to mow the ditch. However, it often goes, the entire growing season without getting mowed, and then even then the entire thing isn't mowed. And so we had a case in our ward where the weeds were getting taller than I am on this ditch, and then there's animals living in there and all kinds of things. So my question is just if there is anything that we can do as a city to update our code or to require more regular maintenance. Since the time I've submitted this, I've actually learned quite a bit more about ditches and mowing, and that they don't really have to follow our city ordinances, is my understanding, in terms of mowing.
I don't think there's any truth to that statement. Ditch companies are required to follow city ordinances.
That's not true.
Where'd you hear that?
That's true.
Yeah, it is. I'm certain it is.
Well, then I wish you would have been here when I called and asked that question, because, okay, so, well, then I would like
Apologize.
to.
So, thank you, if I may.
Okay.
Okay.
So now I have no idea
Yeah.
what is the correct answer here, because I was told specifically that that is not correct. So
And I
would
apologize.
Just like further
I apologize for the
clarity
confusion. Ditch companies are not exempt from city ordinances when it comes to mowing their weeds. The city can enforce and tries to enforce against ditch companies. We don't get a lot of good response from the ditch companies. Typically, depending on the ditch company, and they're all a little different, but a lot of them have plans where they basically they mow their ditch rider road, and they start at one end of the ditch and they go all the way to the other end of the ditch, and a lot of times it takes the entire growing season, depending on where they are and how many people they have to use. Some ditch companies will only mow the ditch rider road portion and not the other side of the ditch, which is, I think, where some of the problems arise. I know code enforcement, we've talked to code enforcement to see what they've done and what they've tried to do. And one of the issues with a lot of ditches, especially in Lakewood, and there are, I think, 17 ditch companies in Lakewood, some 35 laterals as well, that a lot of these ditches have existed for a very long time. Some of them have prescriptive rights, and they're not reflected in plats. They're not reflected even at the county as far as the assessor's office is concerned, because they've been existing, and so what you see is the people who own the underlying property or the adjacent property, but the ditch itself isn't even called out on a lot of these maps. So the problem that we have, for example, if we were to cite ditch companies, in certain instances, is that we can't place a lien because the lien we would be placing would be on other people's property. So there are a number of issues that are associated with trying to get compliance from the ditch companies for mowing, and one is their schedule, one is the difficulty that they have getting to one side of the ditch or another, and the other one is the difficulty that we have as an enforcement body to ensure that there's some enforcement possible. Typically, when we have weeds or nuisances or other things like that, we always have the sort of the stick, if you will, of placing liens on the property. A lot of times that just isn't available when it comes to the ditch companies.
Okay. Well, this is quite a bit different from what I had heard previously. So what I would like to do then is to continue pursuing this, because it did, I'm not sure if others of you have heard this or had this issue in your wards with other easements and ditch and utility easements, but essentially, if there is a way that we can encourage or require that they maintain it to a more reasonable schedule and a more complete clearing of their property, so that it's, we expect that of our homeowners, and it seems to me that we should expect that of other property owners. So I would like to, continue to pursue this and see if there are any ways that we can foster that. In our ward, it resulted in me calling the ditch company about 10 or 15 times, and they did end up mowing it, which is great, but I would not like to continue to do that every summer. So, thank you.
So So thank you. Couple things, and I think I was on the phone with the same ditch company a few times as well. But I did learn also from the ditch company that the way their right-of-way works, sometimes it's their property, sometimes it's the property owner who abuts it. So it was a real hard, tough determination for them to know whose right-of-way they were on or what they were doing. And we've had a kind of an outlier of a year, so we've certainly seen a lot of growth. What I might suggest is to really have council get a clear understanding of what we can and can't do before we go forward, and maybe that takes place within a memo or something along those lines, and then we can have a more thorough discussion once we are fully aware of the ins and outs of dealing with our partners at the ditch company.
Certainly, we'd be happy to provide you with a memo. We've done a fairly significant amount of research on this, and I apologize that wires were crossed. You got some bad information. I'm sure it was unintentional, but we'll circle the wagons and figure it out, hopefully by the end of this week.
Mayor Pro Tem Abel.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but state law requires two things of ditch companies: not to lose any water from their ditch and to maintain the banks. Would seem that perhaps we could get by using the maintain the banks portion of that. However, I have a ditch and it's an easement. I also have utility poles in front of my house that run along an easement. If I don't mow that easement for the utility poles, then I'm the one that talks to code enforcement. It would seem to be a difficult stretch to have one easement follow different rules than the other easement, and I believe some 20 years ago, the city wrestled with that very question. The forester used to require ditches to maintain the trees along their stretch of the ditch, and the easement or the ditch companies prevailed in insisting that that duty belongs to the property owner. So if you can straighten up that quagmire, you will be more deft than most people.
You're right, Mr. Abel. It is a quagmire. Ownership sometimes is fee ownership by the ditch companies in the sense of a right-of-way, and sometimes it is an easement. And most utilities, sometimes they have easement. When they do have a right-of-way, they usually have a right-of-way because they have high-tension power lines and that kind of thing. And they're already required to maintain those types of rights-of-way or easements under the requirements of the PUC. But like you said, you have utility poles. They should be maintaining those as well. And in some cases, it depends on where that easement came from. Some easements are done by plat, some are done by agreement. So it's a mess. It really is. We'll try to come up with some strategies for you to consider.
Councilor Roybal.
I think I have a simple solution for that one. Just sitting here, just thinking about it. Councilor Goodwine, you had the perfect suggestion. What we need to do is ask the ditch companies for their formal plans on what they are responsible for. Let them tell you, and then we hold them accountable for maintaining those particular properties. Real simple. Just a thought.
Councilor Harrison.
Thank you. I guess what I'm concerned about with this is if those weeds were growing in my backyard, I would be cited. But when they're just across the fence line and now it's in the ditch company's right away, they can ignore that for any length of time that they want. I get that it's a trouble and I get that it's hard, but I think we've got to come up with something because it's not fair to a business or to a personal property that they have to cut down weeds, and yet the very weeds that are coming into their yard are coming from the ditch, one way or the other. Either they're carrying the seeds down or they're right there. I think that we have to figure out a way to clarify. Maybe it's communication, who owns the property. That might be an easier way, because I think some people would actually take the responsibility of cutting down the weeds anyway if they knew that they could. I think a lot of people assume that they're not supposed to because it belongs to the ditch. So I think if we could be clear in our communications, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. So does that suffice to start with some more information?
That would be great.
Okay.
I think that would really help all of us and our community. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much. 7:50, Margie. All right, so we'll go to reports. Incredible week last week, lots of fun events, a lot of community taking place. Want to thank everybody that participated in National Night Out. I think over 30 some parties. It was great to see the police and the fire and see everybody out and about. So want to thank the PD for another successful year and all the neighborhoods that participated. We had the Ralston House 0.5K on Saturday. It looked like a great success, as well as the annual trolley coming out to visit. And a couple months ago, about a month ago, you heard me mention a gentleman named Mike Kotar, who was a World War II veteran who passed away at 96. He was laid to rest on Friday, and we were able to issue him and his family a proclamation on the day of remembrance for him. So I want to thank Margie for all of her help putting that together, and actually was able to visit with their family on numerous occasions. So I know they were very grateful for that and appreciate that. Mayor Pro Tem?
National Night Out was important for all of us. It was great seeing all the community members banding together and making neighborhoods. And remember, school starts this week, so watch out for the little kids. I turned the corner by South Lakewood today, and they had a back-to-school event, and I was going too fast. So slow down and watch out for the kids. Even when those lights aren't flashing in school zones, slow down for the kids.
Councilor Roybal?
Thank you, Mary. Just a quick reminder, on the 24th of this month at noon at Lasley Park, we're going to be having our community picnic. So please come down and enjoy. Thank you. That's it.
Councilor Gutwein?
Thank you. I wanted to thank staff very much for the proposed nuisance ordinance that we just received, and it's available online now, that we will have a study session on the 19th. This is our first public meeting about it, but there's been a lot of work behind the scenes, many meetings, and a great task force put together to address this issue. And I really appreciate all the work that has been done to address that. And I'd also like to ask my colleagues if we are hearing this on the 19th. This will help address a nuisance home in Ward 5, among other nuisance homes, and that has been an ongoing issue for about a year in our ward. And our whole community would very much appreciate if we could do our research ahead of time, if you have any questions, so that we can move this forward as quickly as possible. I would be happy to help with that, or if you can direct your questions to staff. But I would just really appreciate any work that you can do ahead of time to make that go smoothly that evening would be appreciated. Thank you.
Councilor Skilling? Councilor LeBeer?
Yeah, just want to mention our ward meeting is August 14th. That's Wednesday, 6 p.m. It's going to be at the Clement Center, 1580 Yarrow Street. And I know it's going to be a riveting conversation about sales tax. So you should please join and come learn more and hear from Mr. Dorr. So thanks.
Councilor Harrison? Councilor Franks?
Thanks, Mayor Paul. First, wanted to thank all the folks who showed up for the Ward 4 meeting this past weekend. Very lively discussion for those of you that were there. Also wanted to just give a shout out to Glennon Heights that had their first National Night Out. They did an ice cream social, and Councilor Skilling and I went and served ice cream. We have a good chance of a second career as ice cream scoopers. We did a great job. And the last one was, now this is a ways out, it's Festival Italiano at Belmar is September 7th and 8th. But I did want to mention that Zero Waste Services, which tries to reduce the amount of waste that is produced at festivals, they are looking for volunteers. I will be volunteering one day at the information booth and look forward to seeing a bunch of you out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. I too went to see their beautiful trolley this Saturday. It is really a treasure for this city. And the last word that I got was there was about 1,000 people that came to see the trolley and ride it. What this has stirred is to have earnest and honest conversation regarding a permanent placement for this trolley so that people can enjoy it year-round. And I hope that we can begin that dialogue and honestly start to look for a place for it. Thank you.
Councilor Bita?
No report.
Councilor Vincent?
Yes, I would like to say that the time that Councilor Franks has for information at the Festival Italiano is taken because I took the other slot. So you'll have two council people giving you information. That could be troublesome. But anyway, and I'd like to thank everybody for the National Night Out too. It was great. And for those people in Ward 2 who've any additions to the nuisance ordinance, let me know. But if you look at it, I think we've incorporated what we've heard for about the last 8 years. So, but if there's anything else, let me know. Thank you.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, Margie, you got your wish. We're going to adjourn at 7:57. I'd like to thank our police agent for keeping us safe tonight, and we are done.